The riskiest deals that paid off. Over the past 16 seasons, we've seen all manner of junk come through the shop on Pawn Stars. Some items are instantly recognizable, while others are a bit harder to suss out. With the market for fakes still alive and well, it can be difficult for the guys to know what's legit and what's not. While they always have experts on hand to call, sometimes they take a risk without getting an appraisal. More often than not, it can be disastrous. But in these cases, it's seriously paid off. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing videos about your favorite movies and TV shows.
One thing that concerns me is, would we be able to fit in that thing?
Let's try it.
1932 Custom Ford Roadster. It's no secret that Rick loves vintage cars, and he really hit the jackpot when this 1932 Custom Ford Roadster was brought to him. Everything from the matte black exterior to the beautiful interior just screamed luxury, and given that the car was built almost 90 years ago, it had only done 450 miles. That's less than what some people do in 2 weeks. The gorgeous car wasn't exactly a bargain to buy, and it cost the guys $68,250. The seller wasn't over the moon with that either, but the experts said that it would cost over $100,000 to build from scratch. One of the most unexpected items to make bank? Probably not, but certainly one of the rarest finds the show has seen in its history, and that's worth mentioning. Plus, buying it is one thing, but finding someone to sell it to is another.
Indeed.
Signed copy of Dracula. One gentleman brought in a book that he happened to buy by chance at an auction. At the time of purchase, the buyer didn't realize that the copy of Dracula was actually signed by the author himself. Considering that Bram Stoker passed away in 1912, that makes the book pretty rare and very old. The guys quickly called on their signature expert Drew to verify the authenticity and were very pleased with the results. Not only was it the real deal, but it could fetch a pretty penny if it attracted the right buyer. Despite some wear and tear on the cover of the book, Drew believed it could fetch up to $5,000 at auction. That's not bad for a bunch of paper and a little bit of ink, is it? But given that Drew has been wrong before, this was never a sure thing. Negotiations started and the customer sold for a lower than expected price, walking away with just $2,350. The shop doubled their investment, and someone was left with a copy of Dracula touched by the master of horror himself. All's well that ends well. D.B. Cooper Bill. The mystery surrounding D.B. Cooper is perhaps one of the most infamous in history. On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, an unidentified man hijacked a Boeing 727 and demanded $200,000 in ransom for the safe return of the passengers. Once he received it from authorities, the plane was refueled and the passengers released. Cooper instructed the pilot to take off and head for Mexico, but somewhere around Reno, Nevada, the unnamed man parachuted off. Since the crew were locked in the cockpit, no one knew exactly when or where he exited, and none of the planes trailing the Boeing spotted his departure either. Neither the man nor the vast amount of cash were found, except for about 290 fragments found in 1980. But these are easily forged, and only around 20 of the pieces have been authenticated. The entire situation continues to fascinate the public, so when a guy walked into the shop trying to sell his fragment, the guys thought that this was the best thing ever. The tiny piece became Rick's for a meager $1,600. Considering that similar fragments sell for upward of $5,000, that's not bad going. Can you imagine selling a teeny tiny piece of an old dollar bill for that price? If only. Paul Revere Silver Spoon. Sometimes it's the littlest objects that can bring in the most profit. This was certainly the case when one customer brought in a silver spoon created by Paul Revere, the Revolutionary War legend. Revere is an important name in American history, as he was the one who warned the colonial militia about incoming British troops before the Lexington and Concord battles. His ride to warn the soldiers was dubbed Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. But he wasn't just known for his war exploits. Revere was also a talented silversmith. One seller brought in this famous piece of crockery for the guys to look at after it had been handed down in his family for generations. The back of the handle was stamped with his name, so it looked legit, but Rick didn't really know much about it apart from that it looked old. Harrison was desperate to get his hands on the spoon, but didn't want to pay too much for it, even though the expert estimated the value at around $18,000. The customer was fairly desperate to sell the item, as he was in the process of paying for his daughter's expensive wedding, so walked away with $9,500. Rick was more than happy with that, as it gave him the potential to double his profits. All in a day's work.
We're from 20 grand to 50 grand.
Yeah.
ALBRECHT DURER etching. When it comes to paintings and the like, non-expert eyes can be easily fooled. Drawings and sketches can be made to look older than they actually are, and sometimes fakes are so good that only the best of the best can identify them as false. Rick took a hell of a gamble when he purchased an ALBRECHT DURER etching that one gent brought into the store. Johnny, the seller, said that he didn't like the print at all and wouldn't mind parting with it. Among other things, he called it sadistic and creepy. It wasn't exactly a picture of some kittens and puppies, but the guys seemed to like the look of it. Rick knew that an original piece of work from a Renaissance artist could fetch upwards of $300,000, but didn't really have a clue when it came to print. The expert he would call was busy opening a gallery out of town, so Harrison had two options: forget about it and turn the customer away, or take a shot in the dark and hope it paid off. Rick chose to live dangerously and asked Johnny what he wanted for it, but Johnny didn't really know either. Originally, he just wanted $2,000, but once he got an inkling that it might be worth more, he haggled his way up to $5,500. The saga continued when Rick took it to be valued and was told the etching could fetch up to 10 times the amount he paid for. That's not a bad find at all, although Johnny is probably kicking himself.
Away from Rick and Corey.
Helicopter gamble. Every now and then on the show, Rick is called out of the shop to go and look at something big. This time, it was a helicopter. Only when the big man got there, it wasn't quite what he expected. Instead of a fully formed, fully functional chopper, the seller was trying to hawk Rick a bunch of broken parts. According to him, the hunks of metal were a military-designed helicopter that was built specifically to crash. An expert told Rick that he could fix it up for about $100,000 and that it would likely sell for $150,000. Rick likes big numbers and big profit, so he gave it some consideration and shook hands on the deal for just $10,000. When he went back to the shop, he wasn't sure what the old man was going to say about his latest purchase, and Papa Harrison certainly wasn't impressed. Rick gave him two options: sell it for parts and hopefully double the profit, or fix it up and sell it on. The old man told Rick to do what he wanted, and the heir to the pawnshop empire went ahead and had it transformed from a bunch of junk to a fully functioning helicopter. Of course, the old man was the first to go up in it, and he didn't come down, so it must have worked. That's a tidy profit for around $40,000 after taking a chance on some worn-out broken parts. Leaving Las Vegas. It doesn't take a genius to know that buying something from someone when you have literally no idea what it's worth is usually a stupid idea. If you don't know what you're looking at, then it's probably best to put your wallet away, unless you've got money to burn. Luckily for Corey, he's in the latter camp. One customer brought in a first edition copy of John O'Brien's book, Leaving Las Vegas. The book isn't as well known as the film adaptation, which earned Nicolas Cage an Oscar for his portrayal of an alcoholic determined to drink himself to death. The book was also signed by the author, but given that it was published in 1990, it wasn't exactly a rare artifact. However, Corey was a big fan of both the movie and the book and was taken by the story around it. O'Brien was an alcoholic that struggled with many issues himself, and 2 weeks after it was announced that his story would be hitting the silver screen, he took his life. The seller, a collector of books, was hoping to get at least $1,000 for his item, but the younger Harrison managed to wrangle it down to $500. Given that he hadn't consulted an expert to A, check out the book's condition, or B, authenticate the signature, it was a risk that could have ended badly. Later in the episode, Rebecca Romney takes a look over the book and tells Corey that it'll probably fetch $750. It's not a lot of money, but it's a profit. Harrison was more than relieved, thinking that he had made a huge mistake and brought in a dud. CHUMLEE'S swords. Over the years, Chumlee has made some embarrassingly bad decisions, parting ways with thousands of dollars of cash for complete rubbish. In fact, he's brought so many duds over the years that it's hard to see why he's kept on the payroll. But this is TV, and he adds some much-needed comedy to the show. In one episode, Chum spends over $3,000 on 3 samurai swords without consulting anyone, even though both Rick and Corey were in the building. According to him, the seller was in a big rush and the deal had to be done or they would have lost out. Rick gets pretty annoyed and calls in an expert so he can see how much money he's lost. But he's soon left eating his words. As it turns out, the swords were made by a very famous swordsmith, Takahashi Naganobu. His blades are thought to be so sharp that one even sliced through a machine gun in World War II. One of the swords dated all the way back to the 1400s. With everything taken into consideration, the expert put a value of $13,000 on the swords and a huge smile on Chumlee's face. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing content, and don't forget to check out one of the other 2 videos on your screen.